So now that I have some reference in here, I am going to start my sculpting. Right now I'm generally practicing I'm going to practice good sculpting practices, which is first we focus on our shape, our silhouette, and then we move into features. But before I go into features, I'm looking more at placing landmarks than just features, where I want to make sure that I can navigate around my character easily. So I drop in my landmarks first. But I still have layers. I can't subdivide this. I can't do anything with the mesh. I can't remesh unless I bake all my layers. So I'm happy with what I have here. Just click that bake all, and my layers go away. Now I can subdivide and I can Dynamesh. And I'm going to stay in Dynamesh. I don't necessarily need my subdivisions because certain things are going to change. I want to stay in Dynamesh. Let's see what the resolution gives me right now. 536 at 4th subdivision. So 8,000 polys. That's a little low. Let's bump this up to 64. And the reason why I say that's a little low is because I want to be able to move quickly, smooth quickly, sculpt quickly. I want to be able to drop in this thing relatively quickly, like the collarbone that I'm going to do in just a second. Let me get rib cage first. And let me take a look at what's going on here. So let's bring that back just a little bit more. That was more like a human rib cage. Make it a little more cat-like. In the collarbone, if I go with bird bones in the front here, some birds have floating clavicles, but I think I'm going to go big cat, in which case the clavicle is going to come up like this, nice S shape. From here, I'm going to get my scapula. And more importantly, I'm not going to do the entire scapula right here right now. I'm just going to do the spine of the scapula. So if you're not familiar with the scapula, the spine of the scapula is, let me pull up some reference for you guys. So here's a human scapula. You can see it here on the skeleton. So the spine of the scapula is this right here, right? Oh, there we go. It's this little ridge right here. There's a draft between here and here where this sits in front. This on the human body is almost always visible, and those parts of the body that are almost always visible are the ones that make for great landmarks. So in a cat, especially big cats, let me pull that reference back up. So let's go look at big cats, like a tiger. Actually, I think a cheetah might show it a little bit better. Might be hard to see with the spots, but hopefully you guys will be able to see what I'm showing you. Yeah, that's not such a good shot. Oh, you can see a little bit there, right? So there's the scapula, right? There's the spine of the scapula coming up like this, right? That's the scapula right there. So the scapula and the clavicle both make for very good landmarks in the upper body. The lowest ribs also make for good landmarks, as well as the sternum. And this might just be me, but I like to save the head for last. And I think the reason why is because when I started drawing as a kid, I would always come in and do the eye first, and I would build out from the eye, and I'd work my way through, and I'd spend all this time in this area. By the time I would get to drawing out the body, I would be so burned out that I would have no energy or motivation to really make the body spectacular. So it's something in myself where I go, okay, I'm going to take this weakness and I'm going to flip it. Right? I'm going to take my weakness of always working on it. I'm going to say, okay, I'm never going to start with the eye, never going to start with the head, or I'm going to try not to. And I did on the first one. I failed last week. I started on the head. But I'm always conscious of that. Like, you know, a lot of people who might have difficulty with hands and feet. I mean, even there's a lot of pros out there that have problems with hands and feet. And when I find something like that, I want to just nip it in the butt and try and break myself of it, or at least always be conscious of it. All right, so let's make sure I got these in the right place. I think I hit the clavicle a little too high. Let's bring that back. Put that right there. And this is just a launching point, right? So I'm putting in what I'm seeing right now, right? And this is a launching point after I block in the anatomy markers and my landmarks. Then I can start playing with it and getting a little more creative. And that's a process that I do. I mean, a lot of people do it in 2D in Photoshop. I do it in ZBrush. All right. So I don't have a great close-up of the pelvis. And you know what? I don't necessarily need one because I can recall quite a bit. But I'm looking in this area. I think I'm going to go with that. And actually, that needs to come back. More like that. I'm just going to drop it in there loosely. All right. From there, I'm just going to mark in the spine with a single line and dig in on either side. And we'll end up filling that in. But I like having that dividing line as another landmark for me to use. And I think I'm good to go. So now I'm going to go back and examine my shape from more than just my front and side and all that. I'm going to kind of look at it from more awkward angles. And I'm neglecting the wings still on purpose so that I can deal with the body and make that interesting. And then I can focus on the wings separately. I think whenever I've had to do fantasy avian creatures, the wings, if you try and do it at the same time that you're doing the body, I always feel like something suffers. At least for me, it gets in the way, right? So I end up either focusing on the wings, or I can't see past the wings to the body, and the body ends up not looking as interesting as it could because it's complicated by the wings. So I do the body and then I adjust the wings, or I do the wings and then I go back into the body and I make any minor adjustments I might have to do. And speaking of that, I do need one thing from the wings. And I think I'm going to go with that same design I went on the dragon, which is that sort of secondary scapula that hinges on, or just behind the normal natural scapula. So I'm just going to drop this in. There we go. Let's remesh. All right. So landmarks are in, both for the most part, at least for the body. I still have to go through the legs, but I'm going to focus on the body first and I'll go back through the legs. So adjust shape. Just rotate. I'm looking at my edges as I rotate. So I'm looking for anything that's dipping in. It's on a nice transition. From the top view, I feel like this is being lost, the waist is being lost. I don't want this sort of straight line. I want something interesting from the top, so I'm going to bring that in. And start to round out the neck. Go to the back, and this is just a really quick pass, right? I don't want to linger here for a long time. All right, I think I'm good. I'm happy with where it's at right now. I want to bring up the limbs to where the body's at. So I'm dropping in, looking at these bones, right? This bone right here is protruding in the front here, which is going to make for a good landmark. Even if I had never seen a big cat before, I could easily identify that between a couple different images. It's just I would correlate this to the femur in a human, right? We have that little bony protrusion of the femur sticking out on our hips. I might want to start looking at my bird anatomy. So I'm just going to get a little funky, but do I have a good shot of legs for bird legs? Doesn't look like they do, so I will go back to search just to take a look. I want to make sure that I am looking at birds of prey. I don't want to be looking necessarily at a chicken. So let's take a look at, that's a spectacled owl, vulture. Let's go eagle. I think I did grab this image, but it's fine. Let's look from here. And actually, you know, I'm going to go with this illustration. I think I'm happy with that better. For some reason, the illustrations speak to me more because they're simplified. They break it down into the important components, the contours, the bones, so I can see how things connect a little bit better. All right. I'm going to go ahead and use my see-through here at the top. And I'm going to have to play with this a little bit because it's not exactly bending the same way. You guys still awake out there? All right, Simon, thanks. All right, I'm just checking. All right, I'm going to put that little bend that exists in those bones. I'm going to do it the reverse of what we saw. So this should actually come back like that a little bit. And then I'm going to get a little creative down here. So I just feel like that works. Like that's just my gut is telling me that. We'll see if my gut ends up being completely wrong. My gut tells me I should drive the car off a cliff. Should I trust my gut?